Our studio this morning, a lot of anticipation about this on social media. We have the TalkSport presenters, Mike Graham and Mike Parry with us. Look, Parry's doing his homework. See it. Stop now, pens down, pens down.
Absolutely.
You can't revise anymore.
It's got a very expensive pen.
They're armed with biros, highlighters and all sorts. Right, boys, what are we starting with? We have picked out a story in the Mail. Voters are confident on Brexit.
Well, we keep hearing all about how, you know, the politicians are terribly worried about whether we have a deal or whether we don't have a deal, whether we leave, whether we trigger Article 50. But it seems that the general public out there, basically, are not bothered at all. They're not fazed by whether we have a deal. They're not fazed about Brexit. They're not fazed about house prices plummeting. They're not worried about the pound doing anything bad. A survey by HSBC says that the message from the Remain camp before the referendum took place, that, you know, we'd be all in a terrible place if in fact, we voted to leave the European Union. Nobody's paying any attention to it, so everybody's just getting on with their lives. And I think amidst all of the coverage, which is quite heavy this morning, you know, that's kind of the truth of it all.
Mike Parry, is that what you think? Is that the sense that you get? People are just getting on with it.
Well, people are getting on with it, and they're increasingly getting on with it. I mean, the point is, nobody knew what was going to happen. We literally walked into the unknown, and we're still in the unknown. But, I mean, you take this Guardian story, Britain will be bottom of heap on trade links, in inverted commas, that's a quote from a politician, without deal on Brexit. And then it goes on to say every G20 country's got a deal with the EU. I thought we were getting out of the EU because so many people in this country who do business here are fed up with the red tape and fed up with the constrictive deals dealing with European countries, and now say we can spread our tentacles around the world. You know, we can go to the Southern Hemisphere, we can go to America, we can do deals with countries in Europe who aren't in the EU. So I don't get it. I like Boris Johnson wandering around a field yesterday in Oxfordshire or somewhere, you know, blithely telling us, no, you know, who needs a deal? Nobody needs a deal. That's the attitude I'd like to take, honestly.
Yeah,
but if we're coming out, hang on, if we're coming out, we're not in the club
anymore. I'm not allowed to
anymore.
interrupt you.
Of course you're allowed to interrupt me, yeah.
For God's sake.
There's a Mike G here as well. There's a Mike G.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, he does forget that sometimes. If you let him go, he just goes on and on and on. He'll be here at 11 o'clock.
Well, I'm glad you can control it.
Well, what I was going to say was, it's a bit like when you get divorced, and I don't know how many people sitting around this table have been divorced.
I've no knowledge of that.
I certainly have. But, I mean, you know, you don't want to quite let go of the deal. You know, you're talking about it all the time. Even when you're breaking up, you're going, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to break up? Because you can't imagine what it's going to be like without each other. And I think that's what the politicians are doing. They're so frightened of actually just cutting the cord and walking away that they feel like they have to negotiate everything. Why?
No sense of confidence in pulling out and being independent from the organisation we've decided to leave, if suddenly you're saying, but we still want the umbilical cord, we don't care if it's stretched a bit, we want it. Not for me. If we're going to be on our own, you know, get rid of the red tape. The biggest industry in this country is finance, isn't it? And two-thirds of the whole financial world operates out of London. That's still going to happen, I hope, and that's what we've got to fight for. If we keep in with the European vogue of red tape and deals, nothing's going to change.
I'm going to move away from Brexit because we will be talking about that all day here on Sky News. Events in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords. We'll be following those throughout the day. I want to pick up on this speeding story. Now, everyone's going to be interested in this. Mike P. This is in the Times. Ministers slam the brakes on costly anti-speeding courses.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me at all. Have you ever been on one of these anti-speeding courses?
No, because
I have. Right.
No, because I don't go over the speed limit anymore.
The whole thing... No, I don't go over the speed limit.
No, you didn't go over the speed limit at the time that you went to the anti-speeding course.
Yeah, but it was nefarious and it was sneaky. It was a guy in the back of a police van, you know, with his camera like that, you know, and whoosh, and you go past. But the point is, when I got to the speed course, I had to point out to this guy, he was telling me, you know, how fast you can go, that I've got a better car than him, so I should be allowed to go faster, because 70 miles an hour is ridiculous anyway. And a couple of years ago, we were going to put it up to 80, weren't we? And then everybody said, no, keep it down at 90. But what I love about this is, ministers slam brakes on costly anti-speeding courses. They suddenly found out, if you put people in a room for 3 hours and some, you know, civil servant bore is going to tell you why it's bad to speed, it doesn't have any effect whatsoever on the mentality of that motorist.
More importantly, the insurance companies are now beginning to work out that if you've got on one of these courses, it doesn't mean that they're going to keep your insurance down. It means actually that you're a bad driver because you've been speeding.
There's boxes you can put in your car now, haven't they? A lot of these insurance companies that keep an eye on what you're doing.
Yes, they have, and that's mostly for young kids, you know, because the insurance policy...
New drivers is a good idea.
You're absolutely right. The insurance policy relates to the speed you go. So it keeps their speed down in terms of cost to their parents.
Well, you've got to be more worried at the moment about your car exploding, haven't you? Because he's got one of these cars that's about to be recalled.
Oh, really?
Spontaneously combust.
One of the 80,000 merch. To take
well, I wasn't
we call
actually
it
going to mention
vintage.
that.
It's a vintage car.
Yeah.
I was actually having a discussion with a friend over the weekend, and I was horrified to realise that she didn't know what the speed limit on motorways was. She thought it was 80. We corrected her.
Yes.
But she was asking, why do cars go up to 120 miles an hour then if you can only drive them at 70?
Well,
I didn't have the answer.
Well,
very good question.
On the continent, of course, they can go speedless sometimes in some parts
Parts of Germany, they can.
But the other thing is, quite rightly, how often have you been in a situation where you've had to put your foot down and burst about 10 or 15 miles an hour faster than the car behind you?
Break the law, you mean?
Not to break the law, to get yourself out of a dangerous situation.
Well.
You know, you've got to be aware. You've got to have spatial awareness in the car when you're on the road.
We've got it all on this morning's Sunrise. Driving tips, Brexit tips.
Yeah.
What are we moving on next? We're going to Adele. No, we're not. We're going to Waitrose. Where's Waitrose? What
We'll go to
story is that?
Waitrose. Yeah, well, Waitrose is obviously an indication of the sort of town that you live in. And much to my horror, I discovered just before we came on here today that your co-host, Jonathan, shares an alma mater.
Yeah, we both grew up
with Mike Parry. And Mike Parry, of course, never shuts up about the King's School, Chesterfield, this tremendous school. Turns out he went
Look at the alumni.
Exactly.
We weren't there at the same time, I hasten to add.
You were there probably in a different
You're older,
century.
right?
I would
Different century.
Yeah. Jonathan, is there a picture of you in the entrance hall?
No, there isn't, Mike, but I bet there is of you.
Well, so he says there is one of him, but I'm not actually sure there is.
People have seen it.
You know, I was there about 15 years, probably 20 years after you. They were still quaking in their boots. The staff was still quaking in their boots.
Right. What's that got to do with
Recollection
Waitrose?
of
Is
your
there a
time
Waitrose?
Well, it's
at
a
this
very
school?
good question. Now, you see, I knew this would happen.
How posh is it?
Banking on about Chester. Well, what it is, if your town has white stucco houses with sash windows and a Waitrose close by, it means that you're actually living in a very nice part of the world.
I have
Because
neither.
There is some truth to this, actually, because you've got places like Cobham, Dulwich, Edinburgh, Bath, Cambridge.
Chester's fourth
Chester.
on the list.
Well, it's not actually fourth on the
is.
list. That is, it's amongst the 20 top places to live.
Yes.
It's actually one of the cheapest. You can buy a house there for 2 bedrooms, 170 grand.
Not bad.
So it's a bit of a
move
cheapskate
back.
place, actually.
I was going to say, selling
Only place
convincing him to move
I
back.
wanted to buy the same house in Mayfair, by the way, which has got plenty of Waitrose.
Yeah.
3,600,000
Complete waste.
for a 2-bedroom.
That is
You don't
out.
even get
That is
parking
out of
spot.
all of our
I was
price
actually in Mayfair
range.
not long ago, and you've never seen so many cars like Bentleys, Rolls Royces, Range Rovers, Porsches. They're all just parked in the street.
You got a lot of those in Chester, you know.
Yeah, right.
Stay at the Chester Grosvenor Hotel, which is, of course, the 4-star hotel owned by the Duke of Westminster.
That's right.
And you see them all there.
There you go, you've just secured your free stay. Let's move on to Adele. We found her now. I bet she shops at Waitrose, but does she do it undercover?
Because she does that thing where she goes, I was at home doing the dishes and, with my Chinese and everybody's going, look, we're really sick of this act that she's putting on, that, she's just like an ordinary woman. But, I mean, the most bizarre story, I think, of the day is that Adele, on tour at the moment in Australia, is actually ferried onto the stage in a box. Because apparently... we're told, and I'm not quite sure how kosher this is, but we're told that she can't get onto the stage any other way because of the fans wanting to talk to her. Now, call me old-fashioned, but when you're playing in a big venue, surely you get driven to the backstage entrance where there are no fans.
We do.
You then walk. We always do. Yeah.
When you're on stage.
Yeah, when we're on stage.
Yeah.
We didn't have this trouble at the Edinburgh Festival last year. When you get to the backstage entrance, you're then in the sanctum where there aren't any. I mean, this just seems to me to be a bit of a stunt. Apparently, she's in this box, sweating, and when she gets out of it, she's explaining why she's always sweating. She's got an iPad, and she sits in it for up to sort of 20 minutes before she goes on stage. It's very, very odd indeed.
It's like a magician's trick, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Well, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Cut the woman in half.
She doesn't cut herself in half. I mean, that's the only problem.
The other strange thing about this story is there's 2 parts of this. This is in Sydney. Sydney's a great town, isn't it? A great party town. Everybody goes there. But then she gets this huge sort of like gun out, right? And she starts firing $20 bills and T-shirts into the crowd. Yeah. Just honestly, there's a picture with a huge gun and boom, and all the money.
Well,
and I mean, that's a bit like sort of throwing the money to the peasants, isn't it?
No wonder it's so hard to get a ticket to see Adele in concert if she's handing out free money.
Handing out free money.
Yeah.
I mean,
If she's handing out free money.
Handing out free money. I mean, the tickets are so expensive. She's made so much. I don't think she can quite believe how much money she's got. I mean, every time she turns around, there's another 100 million.
Well, it's almost like she's giving the expensive tickets, the front row tickets. She's giving them a refund almost.
Yeah, probably.
Right, the 2 mics will be back after this short break with more stories from inside today's paper. Stay with us.
With Mike Graham and Mike Parry, the 2 mics. And Mike Parry has spotted something in the Daily Star.
Well, this is about... I have to declare a vested interest here. This is Tony Bellew, of course, who is a rabid Evertonian, Everton fan, and I too...
You have to get Everton into a paper.
Well, Tony Bellew is...
I was wondering when it would crop up.
Tony Bellew is a great Everton fan. I just happen to be so as well. But what I love about it is the man with the golden gum shield, Bellew aiming for hitters, Bond baddie. And he would be brilliant, wouldn't he? You know, if Vinnie Jones can get into the movies with the...
Well, hang on, except...
His previous career, why not Tony Bellew?
Would he not be involved in... You know, you couldn't put away a guy who only had one leg. I mean, when he was fighting against David Hay, he couldn't actually put the guy down.
No.
He was hobbling around on one leg. So what sort of a Bond villain would he be?
Well, he'd be a great Bond villain, wouldn't he? Because you don't mix it with, you know, boxing champions. You know, you just don't. And so I think it'd be fantastic. The other great thing is we don't have enough people in films who have regional accents. And Tony Bellew has a very sophisticated...
Scouse?
No, I don't call it Scouse.
Don't you?
I call it Merseyside accent, you know, a very sophisticated Merseyside
Do you do an
accent.
impersonation? Sorry? Can you do an impersonation? Do you
He's
do
doing it now.
He's doing it.
I'm telling you, when I get hold of David Hay, he's going to remember this day for the rest of his life. Right.
The problem is when they go to LA, they lose it, don't they? Somewhere over the ocean, they lose that twang, don't they?
Right.
Jackie, you've got a story about Maria Sharapova that I know the two Mikes are going to find interesting.
It's a little story in today's papers, but I think when it gets nearer the time, it's going to become a very big story, and that's Sharapova, who is currently banned for a doping offence, as we all know, has been given a wild card into the Stuttgart Open, which is sponsored by Porsche, which is one of her sponsors. And this tournament starts when she's still banned. So for 2 days of the tournament, she will be banned, but she will play in the tournament as soon as that ban is lifted. And Caroline Wozniacki's come out and said, this is disrespectful. It shouldn't have been allowed to happen. But you look at the economics of it, you know, first tournament back, it's going to be worth a lot of money, publicity, etc., etc. What do you think about that?
I think she's brilliant for the sport. She won Wimbledon when she was 17. She's a sporting phenomenon. And I thought she was very harshly treated because I know that she ingested something that was banned, but it had only just been banned, if you see what I mean. And I know that people like her with millions of pounds should have advisors to keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on. But I think if you now made an issue of the fact that the tournament, not her, is going on for 2 days while she's banned, I think you are really victimising a great sporting icon.
Because they're not going to do her any favours by doing it, really, are they?
Yeah. Let us know what you think. News at sky.com, the return of Maria Sharapova. In the meantime, Isabel's here with the weather. Turn here on Sky News. In the meantime, we're joined by the two Mikes. They're back for round two. Ding, ding. The Talk Sport presenters, Mike Graham and Mike Parry, are ready to go and look through your Monday morning newspapers. Welcome back, both.
Hello again.
Now, Mike G, we're starting with a story from the Times, and this is about the rail strikes, the worst strikes since privatisation.
Yeah, since the mid-90s, apparently. There's going to be strikes today up in Merseyside. Northern Rail are going to go on strike along with Southern Rail. So up until now, people have been trying to get into London and they've been struggling. And there's been something like 29 days of strikes over the year so far. Now, it's going to hit the north of England. Merseyrail and Northern Rail are going to be out. And people are going to just struggle to get anywhere at all. Newcastle, Hull affected, Liverpool's affected, Leeds, Manchester. And it's just ridiculous. It seems to me in this day and age that, you know, if they can't sit around a table and actually sort it out, you know, what is going on? The rail services in this country are getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, you travel by rail, famously only in first class, by the way. You never ever buys a second class ticket.
Well, that's because I book it properly. I book it weeks in advance, and if you did it properly, you'd be able to do that.
But don't have to worry about that.
I mean, look, you know, you don't want to gloat and say the rest of the country are now suffering the pain we've been suffering in the south, because I happen to live in the south of England. I live in Surrey. But nevertheless, it might bring a greater, broader view to what it's all about and how difficult it is and how disruptive it is to your life. What I don't understand is if there were genuine concerns about safety and drivers being, you know, penalised and that kind of stuff, there'd be some public sympathy. But where I live down in Surrey, if Southern goes on strike and those trains don't run, there's another company that takes a train through my station, which goes to a different station in London, which I get on, and it runs on one man. So that's accepted in certain parts of the industry. Trains run with one man, and yet the dispute is all about, no, it's not safe to run trains with one man. It's already happening.
And also
in
the other thing,
swathes of the railway network.
And the other thing that happens is that, you know, you'll get a strike that starts at 7 a.m, saying, and finishes at midnight. Yeah. Then, you know, the next day's affected, people take the day off. I mean, it's a shambles. Yeah. It's a total and utter shambles. And I wonder whether we might be better off going back to nationalising the whole thing.
Oh, there you go. That's can open worms everywhere. Let's know what you think. News at sky.com. Mike P in the Express. Family grief as one of the stars of Sister Sledge passes away.
Shocking. Well, I heard about this over the weekend, it takes me right back to my King of the Disco days. You know what I mean?
It's a frightening thought, isn't it? King of the Disco.
You know, not quite the old John Travolta suit, but the spinning balls and all that kind of stuff.
What was your favourite? Mine was We Are Family.
Oh, no, you see, everybody says that. We Are Family, or He's the Greatest Dancer, or something like that.
Which I'm sure they sang at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was not what they sang.
No, but mine was Lost in Music. Absolutely loved Lost in Music.
Another classic.
I was working in Birmingham.
The guy who has such sparse knowledge of music generally.
No.
You're an expert on Sister Sledge. Who knew?
No.
He's got those greatest hits at home, hasn't he? Have you got the greatest hits?
No, I haven't actually. But this group were great in Birmingham. They were big. There's a big disco scene in Birmingham. I was working those days, yeah. And Lost in Music. What's wrong with Birmingham?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but they were big everywhere.
Southern snob.
They were just big in Birmingham.
And honestly, it's really sad to hear it. But so much of what happened in those days was down to Niall, wasn't it? Niall, what's his name?
Niall Rodgers.
Niall Rodgers. And he revived them, and he helped Bowie, and he helped the Bee Gees and everybody. So a great era.
OK, so Sister Sledge, I'm sure a lot of people will be playing their music today, as is always the way when something sad like that happens. Mike G in the Telegraph.
Yes.
Get a grip, says dog owners, as RSPCA tries to loosen.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys have dogs at all.
Well, I've got a Cocker Spaniel, so I'm delighted that the Cocker Spaniel won Crufts.
Yeah, but I bet your Cocker Spaniel doesn't look anything like this.
Doesn't look anything like this, no.
I mean, you know, this one's been sort of blow-dried within an inch of its life. But every year we have Crufts, and every year the RSPCA gets upset about something. And apparently this year they're upset about the fact that there's some kind of a way of making the dog sit up and pay attention by pulling on the lead a couple of times, you know. And you'd think the RSPCA would have something more important to say, because in the end, I despise Crufts. I think it's just a complete and utter waste of time. I mean, there was a ridiculous scene last night because there's a word that they use for a female dog that obviously we can't say. But at the end of this particular sort of massive, parade of dogs, the announcer said, "And the winner is the dog." And I'm like, well, it's Crufts. It's a dog show. Of course, the dog's the winner. You know.
Absolutely.
Why do you think it's a massive waste of time? I mean, there are millions of dog owners and dog lovers in this country.
Well, I love dogs, right? I've got a beautiful Labrador.
Yeah, you don't treat it right.
I treat it very well indeed.
No, you don't.
And he's even met him. But the point is that, you know, it's all about preening, it's all about the owners, it's all about sort of showing off. It's the
not
worst
just sort of celebrating
No.
man's best friend.
No, it's not. Look at the state of that Spaniel that's won. I mean, it's just
also
horrendous.
the competition to win at Crufts now. Did I read over the weekend that flat-faced dogs are now the vogue, and it's very cruel to try and breed a flat-faced dog?
Yeah, apparently they can't breathe properly.
Sorry? They can't breathe. Exactly. And when you have
Well, he can't breathe properly either. I would put him on the show.
He's not entering Crufts, though, is he?
No.
Exactly.
He's too selfish. Yeah. He's too selfish to own a dog.
No, you don't treat your dog properly, because when I ring you on the mobile phone and you're on your mobile phone, you're with your dog is going mad because you're not giving it any attention.
The dog's going, why is he always ringing you on a mobile phone? Has he got anyone to spend his time with at the
And
weekends?
also, my problem with Crufts is I've never met a dog that likes to sit still long enough to have its coat brushed.
Yeah. Right.
Dogs hate that. Yeah,
Right.
that's what this is all about, it
Yes,
seems.
exactly. And I just think it's one of those British sort of institutions that should really have come to the end of its life.
I agree with Jonathan. I think it's a great institution, but there've got to be more safeguards on it to make sure you don't do that thing to try and make your dog a super dog.
Last year they had the problem of people in the audience or in the crowd who were also kind of associated with the dog, blowing dog whistles to get them to do things.
Yeah.
It's
Dirty tricks.
Who wants to be a millionaire all over again?
Mike P, for the risk of offending, I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you a fan of the ready meal?
No, he will say that he's got the
Question of the morning, that.
Got the expression for me, the table for one.
Table for one, yeah.
But no, I'm not actually, and I'm certainly not those trays. I think they're horrible. I think just taking food off a tray like that. These black trays, the story
He
is...
hasn't mentioned the trays, you have to explain.
Well, this is what it's about. The black trays are not being treated properly when they get disposed of, recycling, because they're black, and so they're the same colour as the conveyor belt they go on. And therefore, the magic eye, which is supposed to pick them out and shove them in one direction or other, is not working.
Magic eye?
Yeah, the magic eye.
How does that work?
Well, it's a laser beam type thing.
Is it?
That identifies plastic. I love that. That's so technical.
Yeah.
We're back to Bond again, aren't we?
That's right. So they've got to...
Expecting you.
I've been expecting Mr. One. So they've got to change the colour of the tray, right?
What colour are they going to make it now, then?
They'll have white or something,
White?
Yeah, so then it'll know which you've been to going. But the whole thing is, litter in this country drives me mad. I had a new building built near my development lately, and the building vans all parked in my road. And the filth and the litter,
Are you a big recycler?
Well, not
He goes up and down the
recycler,
street
but
with plastic gloves on.
I
picking up the
do.
rubbish.
I pick litter up from my own street, because if I don't,
The next
nobody
stage
else
is
will.
recycling, though.
Sorry?
The next stage is recycling. Once
do.
you picked up that litter, sort through it.
I do. But what I'm saying is, people who come along and throw their, sandwich wrappers and their empty Coke bottles and their empty fag packets all over my street, they should be prosecuted. And there should be litter police, in my view.
There are litter police.
Well, there should be more. There should be more.
You should join it. You should head it up.
Yeah.
The new bureau. You should head up the list, please.
So much time on his
The biggest issue with those TV dinners is peeling the thing off, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's just horrible. It's just horrible.
You think...
Even when you try to say...
the only chance of really eating that kind of food is if you're 35,000 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
You should not be eating it if you're on the ground.
Well, you're usually drinking when you're at 35,000 feet.
Very true.
But just...
I wasn't saying that to the drinking. I'm not eating ready meals, just
That's
to
a
be
bit
clear.
early for me, to be honest. You guys start early.
Just pulling that thing off the top of a shepherd's pie is so difficult because you only get half of it off, don't you? The rest
And then you burn your
goes
fingers.
in the oven. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
OK, well, that's all we've got time for. Let's take a
There's
quick
not.
We've never seen. Well, there's nothing down there.
You know more about space
Because
than you
if
do
there
about
was,
what's in
it
the
would have come up by now.
Well, apart
you
from
know?
the Mariana Trench.
And you've seen Thunderbird, everetually flies to the
Yeah, it's
surface.
a fictional show.
Yeah, I
It's
know,
actually
yeah,
real.
yeah.
Anyway, it's partly from Chile, where he spent a lot of time in the Atacama Desert searching for bottles of red wine, I think it was, but finding the strange cave paintings.
That's right.
Down the Atacama
That's
Desert.
right.
But it's going to go to the bottom water of the
Yeah.
Antarctic. Oh, it's very exciting. And the data it collects...
You think that's very exciting?
Yeah.
You must have a very dull life.
You're the guy that spends time picking up other people's litter.
Well, that's...
Don't touch me about wasting my life.
That's good for
Touche.
the community.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Well, we're going to be speaking to the lead researcher for
How
Voting with
exciting.
Boatface later here on Sunrise, so we'll get more details. Mike P.
Yeah.
in the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
Somebody who's regretting kissing and telling.
Unbelievable. I just can't believe it. The headline, I regret talking about Diana, says Hewitt. This is, of course, is the super cad, James Hewitt.
Super cad.
Yeah, well, he was super cad.
He was,
yeah,
you're right,
yeah. That was a compliment, then. And he, I mean, you know, he's very, very famous, of course, for having been...
Doesn't he now look like one of those kind of
Looks like-
guys from Central Casting?
Well, he's becoming more cad-like with that
becoming
moustache.
cad-like.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, he looks like he's just about to play some, some villainous
He does,
character
yeah, in
in
some-
a Victorian drama.
That's right, absolutely. But the point is, I regret talking about Diana. I mean, can I just point out, Mr. Hewitt has never done anything worthwhile in the whole of his life.
He was in the army, wasn't
he? Yeah, he was a tank commander for a while, wasn't he, in the desert or something. But I mean, for a while, you know, he became Diana's lover, and he's based his whole life on that. He's tried to cash in on it time and time again. It's only because other people are too embarrassed to sort of do business with him when he's trying to flog documents relating to Diana and all that it hasn't been a greater industry.
Well, presumably it's ruined his life as well.
Well, yes, but he ruined his own life. He ruined his own life. I mean, you know, a gentleman should never kiss and tell. Diana had a lot of men friends in the last years of her life. None of them have ever decided, you know, to try and cash in on it and make money out of it, except Hewitt, because apart from having romanced Diana, he's not really done very else much in his life. And just to say I regret talking about Diana, well, you should have thought about that before you started writing something.
You're not a fan, though, Mike P, no?
I'm not a fan at all, no.
The guy who made a living from...
He regrets talking about it, and we wish we
By the
hadn't.
way.
Jackie's got a story about Maria Sharapova that's caught our attention today.
Well, I know Mike's a fan of Maria Sharapova,
Indeed.
but this story is quite small, but I think it'd be quite important that she is going to be coming back next month at a tournament, and this tournament starts before her ban ends.
Yeah.
So presumably she will get a bye in the first round and play the day that her ban ends. And people have come out and said this is not right. Caroline Wozniacki and other fellow players said it's disrespectful. To be fair, she probably doesn't have that many fans in the locker room. I've heard that she can be a little bit unfriendly, but you think she's been treated
I think she's
quite
been
badly,
treated
and this is fine, is it?
Very
This is
harshly.
fine.
I mean, to start off with, she outed herself. I knew she would have been outed anyway, so in a sense she preempted it. But she was done for ingesting something that had only just become banned. And then it was brought to light.
Also, her, along with a lot of other
Yeah.
Russian athletes, it seems to be a Russian
Yeah.
problem, this
Yeah.
Meldonian.
But she
stuff.
was
she's
out
not
of
Russian.
ban, so
She's not Russian.
shouldn't she
She's
be
not
allowed
really
to
Russian.
play?
What do you mean she's not
Well,
really Russian?
she's not subject to the Russian authorities in any way whatsoever. You know, she's lived in America for most of her life as a tennis player. But I do think she's been harshly. And what's more, I think that anybody now making a fuss about her being in a tournament, though not playing, for 2 days at the end of her ban is, quite frankly, showing their true colours, and that is that if Ms Wozniacki didn't think that she was one of the greatest tennis players in the world, Sharapova, she wouldn't have said that.
But I think it's also the fact that, you know, she's playing in a tournament while she's still banned, and they are manipulating the draw, as it were, to accommodate her, and that's not right.
Yeah, but for 2 days, that tournament's got to have Sharapova in it for her comeback. That will make the tournament.
OK, right, that's what the two Mikes think and Jackie thinks. Let us know what you think. news@sky.com. We're going to cross over to Isabel now, who's got the weather for you. Sky News, our TalkSport presenters Mike Graham and Mike Parry, the two Mikes, are back. And we're talking about Brexit.
Yeah,
it is leading our news agenda today because finally we may be able to trigger Article 50 this week, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. That could come as soon as tomorrow. Then we're out into the great unknown again. You know, it's been the great unknown since it started. nobody still knows what's going to happen or what's not going to happen.
But isn't this the point where we'll start finding out?
No,
we can start negotiating.
I don't think so, because as I understand it, if it's triggered tomorrow, a letter then goes to the heads of the 26 other countries, who then have to have a meeting amongst themselves to decide in unison how to respond. Well, have you ever seen 26 heads of state trying to get together to agree on one policy, let alone a policy which is so controversial about responding to the United Kingdom leaving their club? They don't want us to leave because we've got a great economy and we've got intelligence services and we've got armed forces and we've got things that we can bring to the party in Europe. So I don't think it's going to be an easy path at all.
Mike G, I mean, that's the thing. It sounds like the faff is only just about to begin.
Yeah.
We've been talking about going back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of these artificial deadlines, isn't it? I mean, we've had Theresa May, we've had David Cameron, we've had the referendum, we've had the Scotland input. They want to have another referendum. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I think the people in general are less excited by the ins and outs of the mechanism than they actually are of just wanting to see something happen.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the people, because there's that survey out today by HSBC saying that most people actually are a lot more confident that things are going to be OK than perhaps was previously feared.
I mean, life in general is not that different from when it was before the referendum. I was just in America as well, you know, and people have been, if you read the papers, you think, my God, America's in meltdown, you know, it's awful, everybody hates Donald Trump. You know, I got in the same car at the airport, I went to the same house that my sister lived in, I went to the same city of New York, which is, you know, a little bit more crazy around. Did all the same things, a fair amount of drinking. But, you know, Trump Tower is a little bit of a no-go area. But apart from that, everything's the same. Absolutely. You know, Britain is not really any different.
But that's because Brexit hasn't happened yet. It's just the vote has happened.
Yeah, but what hasn't happened,
though?
What hasn't happened? We're still going to be part of Europe. It's not like we've left the continent.
I think Britain is different. And I think a lot of the immigration debate has changed Britain, because the self-employed people in this country now are about double what they were about 12 years ago. And it makes a hell of a difference to a country if you're standing on your own 2 feet and want to get on with things. You are less inclined to listen to politicians. If your country's ruled by politicians, a huge state factor, then you're very concerned what the politicians are saying. But I think a lot of people in this country, you see them all over the place, people who've come to this country, started their own businesses, are just saying, I'm just going to get on with it. And I think that attitude and that possible input into the thinking of the way we run things is helping the economy to stand up.
Mike G, that was one of the amendments that you know, Labour wanted to get in there, was protecting the rights of EU citizens who are already in this country. And a lot of people said, hang on a second, we haven't got assurances from the other side that those living abroad and out in Europe will have the same guarantees. So surely the Prime Minister can't promise one thing until she's got a promise from the other side. But again,
you know, she can't promise anything as far as what Britain's abroad are going to be treated like. You know, she cannot get a recommendation or even any kind of a promise out of Holland, because they don't know who's going to be in charge. They can't get anything out of Italy, because that changes about once every 3 weeks. You know, Spain is going to have another election soon. You know, Germany's going to have another election. You can't extract any kind of agreement, as Mike says, with 26 different sets of people.
So those 2 years perhaps don't seem long enough.
No, I don't think so.
I also think market forces will have to intervene. Now, for instance, I was in the north of England last week doing a commercial operation on...
Try not to get that plug in, will you?
No. On bar foods and things, right? And the guys who run it advertised for 10 jobs the week before, and they've taken 9 people who've come to this country from other countries, and they took on 3 people in this country who didn't last 1 week in work, because British people of that age now, you know, late teens, are simply not educated in their own brains to do a job from 9 to 6.
That's a very broad brush.
It's a bit of a sweeping
But I'm
statement,
only using the example of what I saw in Wigan last week.
Yeah.
This is what the people who run this company told me. That without...
That was their experience.
Yeah, that's their experience. But you go into any pub in this country, go into any restaurant, any cocktail bar, the best service you get usually are from people who've come to this country from elsewhere, because they value the job. And the market forces are, we're going to need those people in the future as much as we need them now.
Yeah. We've a lot to spend a lot of time in those kind of places. So, you know, it's a genuinely widespread survey, isn't it? No, I don't.
A lot of market research.
No, I don't.
We've got a lot to get through, so let's move on. 10 years ago, I went to Pride Luz to report on missing Madeline McCann. 10 years later, the investigation continues. More money has been given to that investigation. Do you think it's right to keep it open, to keep pushing, to try and find an answer in a case which was so public, had such a high profile, when perhaps other cases haven't still.
I think that's the
got that money
difficulty,
behind
isn't it? I mean, it's almost just a terrible thing if you have to say to some parents, look, we're sorry, we haven't got any more money, we're going to just shut down the operation. But you can't imagine that this would happen in every single case, and people have been critical in the past of the fact that the police have kept it going and kept it open because they're such a nice couple and they're so middle class, and, you know, they
the
seem
more
to
money's
care
been
so
given
much.
because they found a new person.
Well, they say that.
Yeah, but did they?
They say that, but I mean, there's
a newspaper headline, to be perfectly honest. And who is this person? We haven't seen a picture of him or her, haven't been identified. I mean, look, I feel sorry for Kate McCann above anybody else on earth. When she goes to bed at night, when she wakes up in the morning, the terror that lives with her is, I went out for dinner, my child was in bed 300 yards away, and somebody took her. She lives with that. She's got 2 other children. She's got to obviously bring them up. But I feel terribly sorry. But the 2 observations for me are, it's gone on for too long. £11.1 million has been spent on the search for one child. And personally, I don't think Madeline will ever be found. So I personally think it's a pointless exercise.
And of course, I mean, for the parents themselves, they've had a foundation, they've got charitable interests going on. I mean,
they will never give up.
They will never give up, and neither should they. And
No,
of course as a parent, you would never give up.
That's their responsibility.
But to expect all of the forces of law and order in this country and possibly in other countries to continue and search forever, I think that's unreasonable.
OK, another story we're talking about here today is our big ocean rescue campaign and plastics in our ocean. I'm sure you've been following this closely here on Sky News. And well, an interesting fact we have been talking about today is the fact that when our washing machines clean our clothes are made of plastic. So a lot of that plastic goes into the water system and into the sea. So I don't know how we answer this. Do we just stop washing our clothes?
Well, isn't it a bit like when...
Well, I don't think we need to wash them. We don't need to wash them as often as we do.
Well, you don't anyway, so I wouldn't...
You see, the trouble is, he's kind of trying to be insulting. It's a serious subject.
Helping the environment. It's not an insult, it's a compliment.
It's a serious subject.
He is helping the environment.
Yeah.
But only a few months ago, we were told don't go in the shower with a certain shower gel because that's having the same effect, isn't it?
Microbeads.
Yes, that's right. In fact, I nearly threw all...
That was the end of your Poundland stuff, wasn't it?
The Poundland stuff, no. But I threw a load out, and then I found out later it wasn't actually microbeads, it was salt flakes or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
When you say you threw it out, I mean, you just chucked it in the rubbish, did you?
No, I disposed of it in the right way.
Yeah, I see.
But no, you're absolutely right. Why can't somebody invent a bottle? I mean, we're always told, aren't we, that plastic bags are what's it called? Biodegradable, right? Except that we found plastic bags in our respective homes, which like 6 months old, and they do degrade. They go to nothing. Now, why can't you make bottles that disappear in sunlight? You can do that with other things.
I found one. I found one in the supermarket the other day. It was a washing powder. Yeah. It was made out of cardboard, but it looked just like a bottle.
Right.
The downside, it cost £12 for one thing of washing powder.
Wow.
So obviously it's very expensive to manufacture a bottle like that.
That's for one wash or for 10 washes?
Probably I would say about 12 washes, something like that.
That's the problem with these clothes, I think. A lot of the clothes that are the bad ones are the cheap ones.
Yes.
And, you know, that you've got to try and then persuade people to buy environmentally friendly clothing.
I mean, I was celebrating the fact that some manufacturers are now making clothes out of the plastic that's come from the ocean, so recycled ocean plastic is being made into clothes. But now, if you put that in the washing machine, that's going back in the ocean. So I'm totally
Well, that's
confused.
it. I mean, I guess the answer might be to actually get biodegradable clothes, so that once you've worn them three or four times, they just kind of disintegrate into nothing.
They exist.
Hopefully not while you're on the tube.
No, they exist. You're supposed to bury them in
You've
your
seen the time, by the way. Check it out.
I love that. We've gone from Brexit to a police investigation to fashion tips. We're getting it all from the two mics this morning.
Exactly.
Stay with us. We'll still have more to come from the boys after the break. We'll be talking about 2 rival football clubs who are set to meet for the first time tomorrow, and it's very controversial. We'll tell you why next. Still here, Jackie and Isabel have joined us, and Jackie's picked out a story that I know the boys will be interested in. 2 teams meeting for the first time in 15 years, but there's a lot of controversy about it. Why, Jackie?
Because they hate each other. They absolutely hate each other.
In a nutshell.
AFC Wimbledon will host MK Dons for the first time, and they just despise this club. This was their club. They feel it was hijacked, taken from them and taken to Milton Keynes, and they hate the fact that Dons is still in that MK Dons name, to the point where on the scoreboard tomorrow they're not even going to have the word Dons on the scoreboard because it just infuriates them so much. This match is a potential for high public disorder. It's a Category C high-risk match, the worst left in London this season, the highest risk left in London this season, and it's near my house, this ground, and I really just hope it all goes down very peacefully. Guys, what do you think? The AFC fans They've got very good
I think
points.
it's time they moved on, frankly.
Yeah, well,
get over it.
I don't think they can, because their club was stolen off them. And
It was not stolen off them. It was done
off.
in a perfectly legal and legitimate way, and they don't like it.
You could say that football rules-wise, but to the fans, they had the club stolen off them.
It was not stolen. That's an inflammatory and illegal word to use.
They had to use the word Dons in the title as part of the franchise agreement, didn't they? But now they can drop it and just call themselves Milton Keynes if they've really got confidence in being their own club. I see that not all the tickets have been taken up by the visiting fans, so clearly some people there are either too embarrassed to come back, or they feel there is a potential for a little fractious debate.
I think they're quite worried, actually. I think some of the fans are really worried that something more will happen. I hope it doesn't.
It's the first time I've ever come across a game that's been in this category with just 4,850 people allowed in the stadium.
It's a tiny stadium, but there's all sorts of things going on. Like they are not allowing the MK Dons players to come in through the home tunnel to get to the dressing room. They're going to have to walk across the pitch in front of everybody.
Doesn't that seem a bit unfair, though? Because you've got a new team that started up in a new town, as it used to be known as, right? You've got players who are professionals who are doing their job, and yet they're being treated sort of like lepers, because it's not their own fault. I have sympathy with the fans of AFC Wimbledon, but in the end, I mean, how long are you going to keep this going for? When does it stop?
Well, it doesn't stop now. They're just trying to build the club back up again.
I'm asking somebody who's got an interest in the club.
Very much so.
I think they're very passionate. It's their club. They own it. The fans own this club, and I don't think they will stop until that Don's name is removed off the MK and they've got their stadium back at Plough Lane.
Right.
And that's when it stops.
Well, it's controversial, but it's going ahead. Whoever has the final word, it will be on the pitch. The two Mikes, thank you very much for your company.
Thank you very much indeed for having us.
It's been great. We will see you again soon, I'm sure.
Lovely.
And despite rumours, they're not in the same outfit. Mike P has stripes, Mike G plain blue shirt.
It's terrible when the tabloids write things that are wrong about it.
Exactly.
You'll be hearing from my lawyers.
Isabel, can they take their jackets off and show off their shirts today? It's nice and warm, isn't it?
Rolling up your sleeves, sunglasses on, you're going to be smiling.
Yeah,
nice.
That's excellent. Good. Looking forward to that.
Looking great. Let's take a look at the details.